They called it a joke night. A roast. I should have known better when Jovie suggested it with that particular gleam in her eye. The same look she got when she landed a big client at the ad agency, or found a designer dress marked down 70%. That hungry, victorious expression that meant someone was about to get played. I'm Keaton Merren, 44 years old, and I fix computers for a living. Not glamorous work, but honest. I crawl under desks, untangle cables, and explain to executives why their laptops crash when they download suspicious attachments. My hands stay dirty, my back stays sore, and my paycheck stays modest. In our split-level house with the peeling paint and crabgrass lawn, that paycheck covers the mortgage, utilities, and groceries, while Jovie climbs the corporate ladder in her glass tower downtown. The living room was packed that Friday night. Jovie had invited her entire circle, Tara Birch from HR at the agency, Madison with her fake designer handbags, Crystal who married money and never let anyone forget it, and 6 others whose names I barely remembered, but whose sneers I'd recognize anywhere. They'd arranged the furniture in a semicircle with one chair in the center. My chair, the guest of honor seat. "Keaton, come sit," Jovie called from the kitchen, her voice bright with false cheer. She emerged carrying a tray of wine glasses, already half empty from pre-gaming. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless despite being home. She'd dressed up for this, a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. I settled into the designated chair, surrounded by faces that barely tried to hide their amusement. Phones were already out, cameras rolling, drinks flowing freely. The atmosphere felt electric with anticipation, like a crowd waiting for the gladiator to enter the arena. "Ladies," Jovie announced, raising her glass. "Tonight we celebrate honesty. No filters, no politeness, just truth. And our guest of honor gets to hear what we really think." That should have been my cue to leave. Instead, I pulled out my phone and casually opened the recording app. Something in Jovie's tone, in the way her friends leaned forward like vultures, told me this wasn't going to be the light-hearted roast she'd advertised. Tara went first. Tall, sharp-featured, with the kind of calculated smile that belonged in corporate boardrooms, she stood and cleared her throat theatrically. "Keaton, honey, we've all been wondering, when exactly did you give up? Was it gradual, or did you just wake up one morning and decide mediocrity was your calling?" The room erupted in laughter. I kept my expression neutral, thumb hovering over the record button. Not yet. Madison jumped in next, her voice slightly slurred from wine. "Oh, I know. It was when he realized he'd never make enough money to keep up with Jovie's ambitions. Smart man. Why try when you can just coast?" More laughter. Crystal raised her glass. "To Keaton, proof that settling is a lifestyle choice." I pressed record. What followed was an hour of systematic humiliation. They mocked my income, suggesting Jovie was essentially supporting a grown man who fixed other people's toys. They ridiculed my appearance, my habits, my family background. Madison wondered aloud how Jovie managed to stay attracted to someone so aggressively ordinary. Crystal suggested I was holding Jovie back from her true potential. But the worst part wasn't their cruelty. It was Jovie's participation. My wife of 18 years didn't just laugh along, she led the charge. When the room grew quiet, she filled the silence with her own observations. "You want to know the truth about Keaton?" she said, standing unsteadily. "He's comfortable. Comfortable with his little job, comfortable with his little ambitions, comfortable with being less. And honestly, I only stayed because leaving seemed inconvenient." The room fell silent for a moment, then exploded in shocked laughter and applause. Someone whistled. Madison actually clapped. Jovie took a bow. I sat there, recording every face, every name, every timestamp. My phone captured the moment Jovie confirmed, in front of witnesses, that our marriage was a sham she maintained out of laziness. It recorded the gleeful cruelty of women who'd eaten at my table, accepted my hospitality, and smiled to my face for years. When the laughter finally died down and they'd exhausted their material, I stood up slowly. The room watched expectantly, probably hoping for tears or anger or some other entertaining reaction. Instead, I smiled. "Thank you," I said, my voice calm and clear. "Thank you for the evidence. My lawyer is going to love this." I held up my phone, showing the recording app that had been running for 63 minutes. Several faces went pale. Madison dropped her wine glass. "You see," I continued, still smiling, "when we refinanced the house 3 years ago, Jovie signed an agreement that included clauses about hostile conduct and public humiliation. She probably forgot about it. She signs a lot of papers without reading them. But I remember everything." Jovie's face had gone completely white. "Keaton, stop! It was just a joke." "A joke?" I looked around the room, making eye contact with each woman. "Funny. It sounded like intent to me. Especially that part where you admitted you only stayed married out of convenience." I forwarded the file to my attorney with a few quick taps, then looked back at my wife. "Your friends can help you find a new place to live, since they give such great advice about my shortcomings." The room went completely silent. You could hear the neighbor's television through the walls, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic. No one moved. "Keaton," Tara said carefully, "you can't be serious. Delete that video." "Why would I delete evidence? You all seemed so proud of your honesty a minute ago." I pocketed my phone. "Jovie, you have 72 hours to vacate the premises. The paperwork is already filed." "You can't throw me out of my own house," Jovie's voice cracked. "Actually, I can. Check the mortgage documents, my name only. Check the deed, my name only. Check the prenup you insisted on. It works both ways, sweetheart." I walked toward the door, then paused. "Ladies, thank you for a memorable evening. Jovie, your friends are welcome to help you pack. They seem to have plenty of opinions about what you should do with your life." I left them sitting in stunned silence and went to my garage workshop. By morning, I'd changed every lock in the house. Jovie moved in with Tara that weekend, loading her designer clothes and expensive cosmetics into garbage bags like a college student fleeing a dorm. She'd tried calling, texting, showing up at the door with tears and apologies, but the legal papers were already in motion. Her own signature had sealed her fate. The neighborhood buzzed with gossip. Mrs. Tilly from next door made a point of watering her flowers whenever I came home, fishing for details with poorly disguised questions about how I was holding up. The mailman lingered longer than necessary, clearly hoping to witness drama. Even the kid who delivered newspapers slowed down when he passed our house, probably hoping to see Jovie's inevitable breakdown. But I wasn't breaking down. For the first time in years, I felt clear-headed. The house was quiet, organized, mine. I could eat cereal for dinner without judgment, watch whatever I wanted on television, and sleep through the night without Jovie's passive-aggressive sighs about my snoring. My daughter Olivia called on Tuesday, her voice tight with accusation. She was 20, a junior at State, majoring in communications and minoring in entitlement. Jovie had clearly gotten to her first. "Dad, what the hell is wrong with you? Mom is devastated." "Your mother organized a public humiliation party and admitted our marriage was a convenience." I responded appropriately. "It was just a joke. You're being ridiculous." "Olivia, your mother's friends spent an hour explaining why I'm worthless while she cheered them on. If that's your idea of humor, you need better material. You can't just throw her out. She's your wife." "She was my wife. Now she's my soon-to-be ex-wife who's learning that actions have consequences." Olivia hung up on me. An hour later, she called back. "I'm not coming home for Thanksgiving or Christmas. This is insane, Dad." "Your choice. But remember who paid for your tuition, your car, and your apartment near campus. That wasn't your mother's generous salary." The line went quiet. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm reminding you of facts. Your mother makes decent money, but not enough to cover your lifestyle. Think carefully about which parent you want to alienate." She hung up again. I went back to my computer repair work, fixing a laptop that had been infected with malware. Simple problem, simple solution. Unlike marriages, computers were logical. My friend Sam from the bowling alley called that evening. We'd been teammates for 8 years, and he'd witnessed enough of Jovie's dismissive comments to understand the situation. "Heard through the grapevine that you finally grew a backbone," he said. "Good for you, man." News travels fast. Tara's been telling everyone who'll listen that you're having a breakdown. Says you threatened a room full of innocent women. I laughed. Innocent? That's rich. Yeah, well, Madison's husband thinks you're a hero. Apparently she came home and tried the same routine on him. He told her to pack her bags too. That was interesting. How many people have seen the video? What video? I'd been careful about distribution, sending it only to my lawyer. But in a town this size, secrets didn't stay buried long. Never mind. Want to grab a beer Friday? I'm buying. Hell yes. The Rusty Anchor? Perfect. The Rusty Anchor was exactly the kind of dive bar Jovie hated. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and a clientele that didn't care about designer labels or corporate politics. Sam was already there when I arrived, holding court with a couple of guys from the auto shop. They all looked up when I walked in. "There he is," Sam announced. "The man who finally figured out how to handle a hostile takeover." I ordered a beer and settled in. For the first time in months, I felt like I belonged somewhere. These men understood work, loyalty, and respect. They didn't mock their friends for entertainment or organize elaborate humiliation rituals. "So what's next?" asked Mike from the auto shop. "Divorce?" "Already filed. Should be final in 6 months." "Alimony?" "Prenup says no spousal support if adultery or hostile conduct can be proven. I've got both covered." Sam raised his beer. "To evidence." "To evidence," we chorused. I was halfway through my second beer when my phone buzzed. Text from Jovie. "We need to talk. This has gone far enough." I showed the message to Sam, who laughed. "What do you think she wants?" "Probably to negotiate. She's realizing that her friend's advice wasn't as valuable as she thought." "You going to meet with her?" "Maybe, but not alone and not without recording it." Another text. "I'm at Tara's. Can you come over, please?" I typed back, "Public place only. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., City Park Pavilion." "Why public?" came her immediate response. "Same reason I recorded your roast. I like witnesses." She didn't reply. Mike leaned over to read the exchange. "You really think she'll show?" "Oh, she'll show. She's probably spent the last week realizing how much money she's about to lose. Jovie's always been practical about finances." "What about your daughter?" That was the part that actually bothered me. "Olivia's young. She'll figure it out eventually." But even as I said it, I knew the situation with my daughter was more complicated. Jovie had 18 years of influence, 18 years of subtle programming about dad's limitations and mom's superiority. One recorded conversation wouldn't undo that kind of conditioning. Sam must have seen something in my expression. Kids come around, Keaton, especially when they realize who's been paying the bills. Maybe, definitely, my ex tried to turn my boys against me during our divorce. Lasted about 6 months, until they needed money for baseball equipment and she told them to ask their father. Amazing how quickly loyalty shifts when reality hits. I finished my beer and headed home to my quiet house, my organized space, my life, without constant criticism. Tomorrow, I'd face Jovie and whatever desperate scheme she'd cooked up with her friends. Tonight, I'd enjoy the silence. But as I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something that made me pause. The living room window, where Jovie's friends had gathered for their roast, was dark. The whole house was dark except for the porch light I'd left on. For 18 years, that window had glowed with activity. Jovie on her laptop, the television playing her shows, the busy hum of her constant motion. Now it was empty. And for the first time since this started, I felt a flicker of something that might have been regret. Then I remembered her voice saying, I only stayed because leaving seemed inconvenient, and the feeling passed. City Park at 2 in the afternoon was perfect for a confrontation, public enough to prevent dramatics, quiet enough for honest conversation. I arrived early and chose a picnic table with clear sight lines in all directions. Old habits from my computer security work. Always know your exits. Always control your environment. Jovie showed up 10 minutes late, probably hoping to make an entrance. She'd dressed carefully, not the cocktail dress from roast night, but not casual either. Professional attire, like she was attending a business meeting. In a way, I suppose she was. She looked tired. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the circles under her eyes, and her usually perfect hair seemed slightly disheveled. Good. Maybe she was finally understanding the gravity of her situation. Keaton. She sat across from me, folding her hands on the table. Thank you for meeting me. You said we needed to talk. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. The lawyers, the paperwork, the locks. It's all so extreme. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us, recording app visible. Nothing extreme about protecting myself from hostile conduct. She stared at the phone. Are you seriously recording this conversation? I'm seriously protecting myself from future misrepresentations. You've proven you can't be trusted to tell the truth about our interactions. It was a party, Keaton. A stupid party that got out of hand. It was a calculated humiliation designed to make me look worthless in front of your friends, and it worked exactly as you planned, until I provided consequences. Jovie leaned back, studying my face like she was seeing a stranger. What happened to you? You used to be reasonable. I used to be a pushover. There's a difference. So what do you want? Money? An apology? What will it take to fix this? That was interesting. She was approaching this like a business negotiation, looking for my price. There's nothing to fix, Jovie. You made your position clear. I'm mediocre. You only stayed out of convenience, and your friends agree I'm holding you back. Problem solved. Now you're free to pursue your true potential. I didn't mean those things. You meant every word. The alcohol just made you honest. She was quiet for a long moment, watching a family play frisbee across the park. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. Tara's apartment is tiny. I'm sleeping on her couch. Tara organized the roast, didn't she? Jovie's head snapped up. What? The whole thing was her idea. The seating arrangement, the format, probably even some of the specific insults. Tara's always resented our marriage. That's ridiculous. Tara's my best friend. Tara's a manipulative climber who saw an opportunity to destroy your stability and took it. Think about it. Whose idea was the roast? Who suggested the seating? Who made sure everyone had their phones out? I could see the wheels turning in Jovie's head, memory filling in details she'd missed in the moment. She said it would be fun, harmless. And now you're homeless while she gets to play the supportive friend. How convenient. You're trying to manipulate me. I'm trying to open your eyes. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. You made your choice when you decided public humiliation was acceptable behavior. Jovie leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. What about Olivia? She's furious with you. This is tearing our family apart. Our family was torn apart the moment you decided I was an embarrassment worth mocking. Olivia will figure out the truth eventually. She needs stability, Keaton. Parents who can work together. Then you should have thought about that before organizing a hate rally in our living room. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it. Sam, asking about dinner plans. But Jovie saw me check it, and her expression shifted. Are you seeing someone? The question was so unexpected, I almost laughed. You're worried about me dating? You're the one who admitted our marriage was a convenience. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. And now you're concerned I might find someone who actually values me? That's rich, Jovie. She was quiet again, staring at her hands. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. Real ones, not the theatrical crying she'd perfected for getting out of traffic tickets. "I miss our house," she said quietly. "I miss my life. You can miss it all you want. Actions have consequences. So there's nothing I can do? No way to fix this?" I studied her face, looking for genuine remorse instead of tactical regret. "Do you actually think you did something wrong, or are you just sorry you got caught?" Both? Wrong answer. I stood up, pocketing my phone. "Enjoy Tara's couch, Jovie. Maybe she'll organize another roast to cheer you up." "Keaton, wait!" But I was already walking away. Behind me I heard her calling my name, her voice cracking with something that might have been genuine panic. I didn't turn around. That evening, I was replacing a hard drive in my garage workshop when my phone rang. Unknown number, but local area code. "Keaton? This is Madison from the other night." Madison from the roast. This was unexpected. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to you about that video." "What about it?" "My husband saw it. He's filing for divorce." I set down my screwdriver. "And that's my problem how?" "You don't understand. If that video gets out publicly, it'll ruin all of us, our jobs, our reputations, everything. Maybe you should have considered that before participating. Please, I'll do anything. Delete the video, and I'll testify against Jovie in your divorce. I'll tell the court she planned the whole thing." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Now that was interesting. She did plan it? Of course she did. The whole thing was scripted. She gave us talking points, told us what to focus on, said you needed to be put in your place before you got too comfortable. I sat down heavily on my workbench stool. I'd suspected as much, but hearing confirmation still stung. Whose idea were the phones? Tara's. She said we needed proof of how pathetic you looked when confronted with truth. And you all went along with this? It seemed funny at the time. Jovie made it sound like you were okay with it, like you knew it was coming. I had no idea. I know that now. Look, I'm sorry. We all are. But that video is destroying lives. Good. Keaton, Madison, you spent an hour explaining why I'm worthless while my wife cheered you on. You recorded it for entertainment. Now you're facing consequences and want me to rescue you. Does that about sum it up? Please. I hung up. 20 minutes later, Crystal called. Then another woman from the roast whose name I'd forgotten. All desperate, all apologetic, all begging me to delete evidence of their cruelty. I turned off my phone and went back to work. Let them sweat. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was having coffee on my front porch, enjoying the October air and the fact that I could sit in my own house without criticism, when Tara Birch pulled into my driveway. She climbed out of her BMW looking like she'd slept as poorly as Jovie. Her usually immaculate appearance was slightly frayed, wrinkled blouse, smudged makeup, hair that hadn't quite cooperated. She approached my porch with the careful steps of someone walking on thin ice. "Keaton, we need to discuss the situation." "What situation would that be, Tara?" "You know exactly what situation. This vendetta of yours is hurting innocent people." I almost choked on my coffee. Innocent people? Is that what you're calling yourselves now? It was a party that got out of hand. You're destroying lives over a misunderstanding. I set down my mug and really looked at her. Tara had always been the calculating one in Jovie's circle, the strategist who planned their girls' trips and coordinated their social campaigns. She was also the one who'd never quite hidden her disdain for me, even before the roast. "Sit down, Tara. Let's have an honest conversation." She hesitated, probably sensing a trap, but eventually settled into the porch chair across from me. "What do you want?" "I want to understand why you hate me so much, that you'd orchestrate my public humiliation." "I don't hate you." "Please. We're both adults here. You've spent 5 years making subtle digs about my income, my appearance, my suitability as Jovie's husband. The roast was just your chance to go public with opinions you've held privately for years. Tara's mask slipped slightly. You never deserved her. There it is. Why? Because you're small. Small job, small ambitions, small life. Jovie could have had anyone. Successful men, wealthy men, men who could match her energy and drive. Instead, she settled for a computer repairman who's content fixing other people's problems instead of solving his own. And that bothered you because I introduced you. The admission hung in the air between us. I'd forgotten that detail. Tara had indeed introduced me to Jovie at a company party 18 years ago. She'd been working at a different firm then, before her current position at Jovie's agency. You introduced us, and then spent 18 years regretting it. I thought you were temporary, a phase. I never imagined she'd actually marry you. So the roast was what? Your way of correcting a mistake? Tara's composure cracked completely. She was supposed to outgrow you. She was supposed to realize she could do better. Instead, she got comfortable, stopped pushing herself, stopped reaching for more. You made her ordinary. Or maybe she was always ordinary, and you couldn't accept that your friend wasn't the ambitious climber you wanted her to be. She had potential. She had a good job and a stable marriage. Some people consider that success. Mediocrity isn't success. And there's the real problem. You can't stand that Jovie chose contentment over your definition of achievement. Tara stood up abruptly. This conversation is pointless. What do you want to make this go away? Nothing you can offer. Money? I'll pay you. With what? Your HR salary? I laughed. Tara, you drive a leased BMW and live in a one-bedroom apartment. You're not exactly in a position to buy my silence. Her face flushed. You don't know anything about my finances. I know you've been living beyond your means for years, trying to project success you haven't actually achieved. I also know you've been feeding Jovie's dissatisfaction with our marriage because you couldn't stand watching her be happy with less than your imagined ideal. You're wrong. Am I? Then explain why you organized a public humiliation party for your best friend's husband. Explain why you made sure it was recorded. Explain why you're now housing that same friend on your couch while she faces homelessness. Tara was quiet for a long moment, staring at her expensive car in my modest driveway. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. She was supposed to leave you years ago. I kept waiting for her to wake up and realize she could do better. So you decided to help her along. The roast was supposed to be a wake-up call for both of you. You were supposed to see how everyone really felt, and she was supposed to see you couldn't handle the truth. Instead, I handled it better than any of you expected. You destroyed everything. I protected myself from people who wanted to destroy me. There's a difference. Tara stood up, her business mask sliding back into place. This isn't over, Keaton. Yes, it is. You played your hand and lost. Now you get to live with the consequences. She walked back to her car without another word, but I could see her hands shaking as she fumbled with her keys. Good. Let her shake. That afternoon, I decided to do some research. If Tara was living beyond her means, there might be more to discover. I had friends in IT who specialized in background checks for corporate clients. A few phone calls later, I had some interesting information. Tara Birch had been fired from her previous job for falsifying expense reports. She'd avoided prosecution by paying restitution, but the incident had made her essentially unemployable at higher-level firms. Her current position at Jovie's agency was actually a step down from where she'd been 5 years ago. She was also 3 months behind on her car payments and had maxed out 4 credit cards, maintaining her lifestyle. The BMW was about to be repossessed, and her apartment lease was up for renewal at a rate she couldn't afford. No wonder she was desperate to make the video disappear. Her entire facade was crumbling, and public association with the roast would finish her professionally. I was still processing this information when Olivia called. "Dad, I've been thinking about our conversation." "And?" "Maybe I was too harsh. Mom's version of events doesn't match what some of her friends are saying." That was progress. What are her friends saying? That the whole thing was planned, that Mom had talking points prepared, that it wasn't as spontaneous as she claimed. "It wasn't spontaneous at all, Olivia. Your mother organized a systematic attack on my character and invited an audience to enjoy the show." "But why would she do that?" "You'd have to ask her, but I suspect she was influenced by people who had their own agenda." "You mean Tara?" "Among others." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have listened to your side before taking Mom's word for everything. You're loyal to your mother. That's not wrong, even when she is. So, what happens now? Now your mother faces the consequences of her choices, and you decide what kind of relationship you want with both of us going forward." "I want things to go back to normal." "Normal is gone, honey. We have to figure out what comes next." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and considered what came next for me too. The divorce would be final in a few months. Jovie would move on, probably with someone Tara considered more suitable. My daughter would split her time and loyalty between parents who couldn't stand each other. But for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not the diminished version Jovie and her friends saw, but the man I'd been before I started believing their assessment of my worth. That man, I realized, wasn't finished with revenge yet. 2 weeks later, the dominoes began falling in earnest. Madison's husband had indeed filed for divorce, citing the roast video as evidence of his wife's cruel and manipulative character. Crystal's marriage was surviving, but barely. Her husband had moved into their guest bedroom and was demanding counseling. But the most interesting development came from an unexpected source. My lawyer called on a Thursday morning with news that made me set down my coffee and pay attention. "Keaton, I've received some interesting information about your wife's employment situation." "What kind of information?" "It seems there's been some irregularities in her expense reports. The agency is conducting an internal investigation." I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "What kind of irregularities?" "Inflated client dinner costs, fictional travel expenses, that sort of thing. Nothing criminal, but enough to warrant termination if proven." "Who reported this?" "Anonymous tip. But whoever it was had detailed documentation going back 6 months. I had a pretty good idea who might have access to that kind of information." "When will the investigation conclude?" "Next week, probably. Your wife's been suspended pending the outcome." After hanging up, I sat in my garage workshop thinking. Tara worked in HR. She'd have access to expense reports, and she'd certainly have motivation to eliminate Jovie as a threat to her own precarious position. The woman who'd orchestrated my humiliation was now destroying her supposed best friend to save herself. It was almost poetic. My phone buzzed with a text from Jovie. "Can we meet? Something's happened." I typed back, "City Park, same table, 1 hour." She was already there when I arrived, sitting hunched over like she was trying to make herself invisible. Her professional wardrobe had been replaced by jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. No makeup, no styled hair, no armor of perfection. "They fired me," she said without preamble. I heard, "Expense report irregularities." Her head snapped up. "You knew?" "My lawyer told me about the investigation. I didn't know the outcome." "Someone reported me anonymously. Gave them copies of receipts, documentation, everything. 6 months of evidence that I'd been padding my expenses." "Were you?" "Everyone does it. Client dinners, travel costs, entertainment expenses. The agency expects you to be creative with the numbers. It's an open secret." "But you're the only one being investigated." "Exactly. Someone targeted me specifically." I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. Recording, as always. "Any idea who?" "It had to be someone with access to HR files and expense records. Someone who knew which reports to pull and how to make them look criminal instead of standard practice. Someone like Tara. Jovie's face crumpled. My best friend destroyed my career to save herself. She's been feeding information to the agency board, making me look like a criminal while positioning herself as the whistleblower who discovered corruption. And now? Now I'm unemployable in this industry. Word gets around fast about expense fraud, even when it's not really fraud. No agency will touch me. I should have felt satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of consequence I'd wanted. Jovie facing the reality of her choices, learning that actions have outcomes. But seeing her broken like this stirred something uncomfortably close to pity. What about money? I've got maybe 2 months of savings. After that, she shrugged helplessly. Tara's already hinting that I need to find somewhere else to stay. Apparently, having a fired friend on her couch is bad for her image. So, the woman who organized your roast party is now throwing you out? She says it's temporary, just until things calm down. Jovie, things aren't going to calm down. Tara used you to attack me, then threw you away when you became inconvenient. You're not her friend. You're collateral damage in whatever game she's been playing. I know that now. Do you? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the families playing in the park. Normal families with normal problems, not the wreckage we'd created. I keep thinking about that night, she said finally. The roast. It seemed so clever at the time, so justified. You were always so quiet, so accepting of everything. We thought you needed to hear some hard truths. Whose idea was it really? Tara's. She said you'd been getting too comfortable, taking me for granted. She said a little public accountability would either motivate you to step up or give me the push I needed to step out. And you believed her. I wanted to believe her. It was easier than admitting I was the problem. That was the closest thing to genuine insight I'd heard from her. What problem? I was bored, Keaton. Bored with my job, bored with our routine, bored with being ordinary. Tara kept telling me I deserved more excitement, more success, more everything. The roast felt like action, like I was finally doing something instead of just complaining. So you decided to humiliate me for entertainment. I decided to shake things up. I thought you'd fight back, defend yourself, show some fire. Instead, you just sat there recording everything like you were gathering evidence for a lawsuit. I was gathering evidence for a lawsuit. I know that now. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, Jovie looked up at me with something that might have been hope. Is there any way to fix this? Any way to go back? Back to what? A marriage where you think I'm mediocre and I know you think I'm mediocre? A relationship built on your boredom and my acceptance of disrespect? We could try counseling. Jovie, you organized a party to mock me in front of your friends. You admitted you only stayed married out of convenience. You participated in a systematic attempt to destroy my self-respect for entertainment. What exactly would we tell a counselor? That we made mistakes. You made choices. There's a difference. I stood up, pocketing my phone. I'm sorry about your job. I'm sorry Tara betrayed you. But I'm not sorry about the divorce. Keaton, please. Find somewhere else to live, Jovie. Figure out what comes next. But don't expect me to rescue you from consequences you created. As I walked away, I heard her calling my name again. But this time, her voice sounded different. Not desperate or manipulative, but genuinely lost. For a moment, I almost turned around. Then I remembered the sound of her laughter during the roast, the way she'd cheered when her friends called me worthless, and I kept walking. That evening, I called my daughter. Olivia, your mother's been fired. She's going to need support. What? Why? Expense report irregularities. She'll probably call you soon. Is this because of the divorce? Indirectly. The person who reported her is the same person who organized the roast. Your mother's learning that her friends weren't really friends. Dad, this is getting scary. Mom's whole life is falling apart. Actions have consequences, honey. Your mother chose to attack me publicly. Now she's facing the results of that choice and discovering that the people who encouraged her don't actually care about her well-being. But what if she can't find another job? What if she ends up homeless? Then she'll figure out how to survive, just like millions of other people do every day. You really don't care what happens to her? I thought about that question. Did I care? Part of me, the part that had loved her for 18 years, still felt protective. But that part was overwhelmed by the larger truth. Jovie had made her choices with full knowledge of potential consequences. I wasn't responsible for rescuing her from outcomes she'd created. I care that she learns from this experience, I said finally. I care that she understands actions have results, but I'm not responsible for fixing problems she created. That sounds so cold, Dad. It sounds like boundaries, Olivia. Something I should have established years ago. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and considered what came next. The divorce would be final soon. Jovie would rebuild her life somehow, probably with hard-earned wisdom about choosing friends and making enemies. Tara would continue her climb until her own deceptions caught up with her. And me? I'd proven I could defend myself when attacked. I'd learned the difference between being kind and being weak, between forgiveness and enabling. For the first time in years, I felt proud of the man in the mirror, but I wasn't quite finished with revenge yet. 3 weeks before our divorce was finalized, I made a discovery that changed everything. I was cleaning out the basement storage room, boxing up items that were clearly Jovie's, when I found a folder hidden behind some Christmas decorations. Inside were bank statements for an account I'd never seen before, an account in Jovie's name only, containing nearly $40,000 in deposits over the past 2 years. The deposit dates corresponded exactly with her business trips and client entertainment expenses. She hadn't just been padding her expense reports. She'd been systematically stealing from her agency for 2 years, creating fictional expenses and pocketing the reimbursements. The money I'd thought was coming from her salary increases had actually been embezzled funds. I sat on the basement floor, staring at evidence of crimes that could send my wife to prison. The woman who'd organized my public humiliation had been stealing money and hiding it from me, probably planning to use it in the divorce or to fund her new life after leaving me. My first instinct was to call my lawyer immediately. This evidence would not only guarantee me a favorable divorce settlement, it would destroy Jovie completely. Criminal charges, prison time, financial ruin. Everything she'd tried to do to me emotionally, I could now do to her legally. But as I sat there holding the bank statements, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to understand what she'd done, to face consequences, to learn from her mistakes. But I didn't want to send her to prison. Instead, I had a better idea. I photocopied everything, then called Tara. Keaton, why are you calling me? Because I have something you need to see. Something about Jovie's finances. I don't want to hear. Trust me, you want to hear this. Meet me at City Park in an hour. She was reluctant, but curiosity won. An hour later, she sat across from me at our usual table while I spread out copies of the bank statements. What am I looking at? Evidence that your best friend has been embezzling from your agency for 2 years. $40,000 in fictional expense reimbursements. Tara's face went white as she studied the documents. Where did you get these? Jovie hid them in our basement, probably planning to use the money after our divorce. This is... She trailed off, calculating implications. This is enough to send her to prison for several years, I finished. Unless someone were to discover the theft and handle it internally. Tara looked up sharply. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that a conscientious HR professional might discover irregularities in a former employee's accounts and arrange for quiet restitution instead of criminal prosecution. The agency gets their money back, Jovie avoids prison, and everyone moves on. Why would you protect her? I'm not protecting her. I'm giving her a chance to face consequences without having her life completely destroyed. There's a difference. Tara studied the documents again. What do you want in return? Nothing from you. But Jovie's going to owe me $40,000 plus interest. She's going to spend the next several years paying back money she stole, which means she'll be working whatever job she can find to make restitution. That's actually brilliant. It's justice without destruction. She faces consequences, learns from her mistakes, and hopefully becomes a better person. And if she refuses to pay you back? I smiled. Then I release these documents to the police and let the criminal justice system handle it. Tara was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I can make this work. The agency will want their money back, but they'll prefer avoiding the publicity of a criminal case. Good. One more thing. Jovie doesn't know I found these. She's going to think you discovered the theft through your investigation. Let her think that. Why? Because she needs to understand that her actions have consequences she didn't anticipate. She thought she was clever, hiding money and planning her escape. Instead, her own crimes are going to bind her to the consequences of her choices for years. We shook hands like business partners closing a deal, which, in a way, we were. 2 days later, Jovie called me in a panic. Keaton, something terrible has happened. Tara found another bank account, one I didn't tell you about. She's saying I stole money from the agency. Did you? It's complicated. Did you steal money, yes or no? I took reimbursements for expenses that weren't entirely legitimate. How much money, Jovie? About $40,000 over 2 years. I let the silence stretch until she broke. They're not pressing charges if I pay it back immediately. But I don't have $40,000. What about the money in the secret account? How did you... She stopped. Tara told you. Tara told my lawyer during discovery. Apparently, she's been investigating your finances as part of the agency's internal audit. Keaton, I need help. If I can't pay this back, they'll file criminal charges. So pay it back. I can't. The account only has $38,000, and they want 40 plus interest and penalties. I need at least $45,000. Sounds like a problem. You could lend me the difference, just $7,000 to keep me out of prison. Why would I do that? Because despite everything, we were married for 18 years. Because I'm Olivia's mother. Because it's the right thing to do. I pretended to consider it. I'll lend you the money on one condition. Anything. You sign a promissory note for the full $45,000, payable to me over 5 years at 10% interest. You also sign a statement acknowledging that you embezzled money during our marriage and hid it from me. But I only need $7,000. Jovie, you stole $40,000 and hid it from your husband. You were planning to use that money after our divorce, probably to start over somewhere else. Now you get to pay me back every penny with interest, which means you'll be working and struggling and remembering your choices for the next 5 years. That's not fair. Fair? You organized a party to humiliate me, admitted our marriage was a convenience, and stole $40,000. Now you want to talk about fair? She was crying now, but I felt no sympathy. Sign the papers, or explain to Olivia why you're calling her from prison. 3 hours later, she signed everything. The promissory note, the acknowledgement of theft, the agreement that made her financially bound to me for the next 5 years, whether she wanted to be or not. As she handed back the pen, she looked up at me with something like recognition. You planned this whole thing, didn't you? The divorce, the investigation, the discovery of the money. All of it. I responded to your choices, Jovie. Every step of the way, I simply responded to what you did. You've become someone I don't recognize. Good. The person you recognized was someone you felt comfortable mocking in front of your friends. This person won't tolerate that treatment. She left with her check and her debt, and I never saw her again except at Olivia's college graduation 2 years later. She looked older, tired, but somehow more genuine than she'd been during our marriage. Working 3 jobs to pay off her debt had apparently taught her some humility. Olivia split her time between us fairly and eventually admitted she respected how I'd handled the situation. You could have sent Mom to prison, but you gave her a chance to make things right instead. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes, I told her, but they also need to face consequences for their choices. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in November. I walked out of the courthouse a free man, financially secure, and finally at peace with who I was. Tara's career imploded 6 months later when her own financial irregularities came to light. Apparently, investigating Jovie's crimes had drawn attention to her own creative accounting. She moved away from town rather than face the gossip. Madison and Crystal both divorced within the year. The roast video never went public, but the damage to their marriages was already done. And me? I kept fixing computers, bought a better house, and eventually started dating a woman who thought my work was interesting instead of embarrassing. Someone who would never organize a party to mock me because she actually liked the person I was. Sometimes people ask if I regret how things ended with Jovie. The answer is no. She made choices that revealed who she really was, and I responded accordingly. She faced consequences, learned from them, and hopefully became a better person. But more importantly, I learned who I was when pushed too far. Not the quiet, accepting man who tolerated disrespect for the sake of peace, but someone willing to defend himself when attacked. They wanted to roast me for entertainment. Instead, I taught them that some people fight back, and I won.